Hello and welcome to the walk-off, everybody. I'm Scott Belford. Very excited about an incredibly special episode today, celebrating one of the true icons in Toronto Blue Jays history. And we've got a couple of very, very knowledgeable fellows on the man himself, Dave Stieb, to join the show. And we're going to dive into his no-hitters. Of course, it is September 2nd, and this is the anniversary of his no-hitter after pursuing it for about a decade before finally getting there. And very exciting stuff to have these two gentlemen here with me today. Now, before I do the full intros of who they are, Baseball Town. All right. This is one of the most fun live talk shows you can possibly see about everything Toronto Blue Jays, and it's going in 2 days. September 4th, Left Field Brewing in Liberty Village. Our guests, it is stacked. All right. So we have Jonah Birnbaum from The Score. We have Chris Black from Sportsnet, and we have Rob Wong from the Toronto Sun. We are going to dive into everything Blue Jays, so definitely get your tickets for that. You can find that in the description and in the comment section. Hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you're not. It goes a long way on that. Very excited to welcome here from Dave Stieb today Twitter account. Okay, we've got Blake Bell and Len Lumbers. These are two gentlemen who know Dave Stieb and his entire career. You gentlemen are just massive fans. Len and Blake, welcome to the walk-off.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you for having us. It's wonderful to be here talking about one of our favorite topics.
Scott, it's a pleasure. Obviously, we've been connected through the Baseball Town events that I've had the pleasure of going to for the last year or so. So to be on the Walk-Off podcast is a dream come true.
Well, it is really exciting to have you gentlemen here. So let's talk a little bit about how you two first met, and then we'll get into what inspired you to create an entire Twitter account, but not just that, just to dive into Dave Stieb quite to the extent that you two have done so.
For sure. We can trade off here a bit. So we were both born in Toronto, both born in 1970. So we were young enough to be there in 1977, scuttling around the exhibition grandstand, those $2 seats that you could get for a Dominion. So it was great to build towards 1979 when the team was really tanking from an expansion perspective. Their third year was a real struggle. But along comes this burgeoning superstar, Dave Stieb, and that really woke us up. Len and I would meet at Upper Canada College in grade 7. Didn't start off as friends right away, but by the next year, when we realized that we were huge fans of Thompson Twins, comic books, and Dave Stieb, that's when we really started to bond. And I'll let Len pick up the story from here.
Yeah, it wasn't just that stuff. What was it? John McEnroe, Three's Company, the burgeoning Cheers. Yeah, there was a lot of stuff, but we were sports guys, and the Jays, after basically 6 years of that so-called expansion baby fat, had emerged as a really decent, talented team, a flawed team, but one that, because everybody was so young and fresh and new, and hardly any of them had any kind of back history with other organizations, they all felt like they were ours. And from my perspective, Dad took me to a handful of games in each of 77 and 8. I only got to one in 79, and it just so happened to be Dave Stieb's first game in Toronto, and it was a 7-1, a 7-1 4-hit complete game where the only hits were either off the bats of Buck Martinez or a pair of Hall of Famers, Robin Yount and Paul Molitor. So, yeah, it was as Blake alluded to, is a putrid team, 53 and 109, and every metric that you ever look at, whenever the teams have been going badly. We're both on Baseball Reference all the time with our stats accounts and everything. But whenever one of the teams, the modern teams, is doing badly, like the 19 or the 18 tanking teams, or last year's really seriously offensively challenged clubs, you'll start looking at things like runs per game or RISP or OPS or whatever. And the 79 team almost always leads the pack, 81 as well. And this was a bit of a narrative in the early Dave Stieb career, which is that they never hit for him. It's also true they really didn't hit for many of the other guys in the club either. But it was
well, with 53 wins, you don't do a lot of hitting.
No, that's absolutely true. He was 3-2 with the 298 8 ERA after his first 6 starts. And for the whole year, he ended up 8-8. ERA climbed because he got blown out a couple of times. But he ended up with an 8-8 record in 18 starts for a 53-win team. And as Blake can talk about, this is a guy who just been pitching, playing college ball as an outfielder about 14 months prior. I mean, what business does he have in his third and fourth starts at the major league level pitching complete games against good teams? It was very strange.
It is interesting, and it is funny because one of the things that always stood out to me about Dave Stieb, and we are going to try and stay linear here
Yep.
in the way that this is presented. However, I am a little scattered, and so it's just going to come out that way a little. Blake, I'll throw to you here to talk about the ERA because one thing that seems to have happened time and time and time again throughout Steve's career is that he leads the league in ERA. He has an incredible ERA and yet somehow gets looked over because of the wins losses of it all. Does this How has baseball gotten to the point where they are looking at the right stats? Because it just didn't seem like they were there during Steve's time.
He was definitely a trend center. When you go back to 1982, the last time they didn't have a winning season in their expansion era, Steve was the AL Sporting News Pitcher of the Year, but finished fourth in Cy Young voting that year to Pete Vukovich, one of the great highway robberies of all time. The sad part was that the media at the time, the baseball writers, focused much more on wins. They were much more focused on non-Canadian teams, because back in the day, you'd have one of every 4 games might be on TV. So even to see Steve, much less MLB TV and all these things, would virtually be impossible. So you went with what in the stat line, who had the most wins. But when you got to 1983, the excuses started to drop, because one of those big moments, our first winning season, right? We're all rallying around the Jays. Dave Stieb starts the All-Star game in Chicago, and we're all super excited because you rarely had a Toronto player win an awards, be in that national spotlight. And then ultimately that leads to 1985, where Len and I both had the pleasure of going to the first Blue Jays playoff game, which Dave Stieb pitched and won against Kansas City in the ALCS. But all throughout those years, first of all, Pat Gillick hadn't secured Tom Henke, unfortunately, until late 85. So the bullpen was what the writers at the time called the hand grenade brigade, constantly blowing leads for him, and therefore reducing his win-loss record to non-Cy Young caliber by those stats. And again, I think it was also a young and mature team, because if you look at the Detroit Tigers at the time, a championship team in 84, right? Whenever Jack Morris would go out there, sort of as the Grant Fuhr, of the Detroit Tigers, that team would rally up and just score 10 runs a game for him. Whereas when Steve went out there, it was almost like these young Blue Jay players were like, Steve's got it. And it's almost like they just a little bit of an edge was off. And therefore, again, the lack of run support that haunted him, especially in those early years, really cost him, 3 to 4 Cy Youngs. But now when you see players starting less with Felix Hernandez, now up to Paul Skeens, finally, because pitchers aren't going more than 5 innings these days, and therefore aren't racking up the win totals, we're looking more to advanced metrics. And Steve was really the one who laid the seeds for that and tilled some of that ground to where we stand today.
Dave Stieb's always fascinated me because he was a little bit before my time. My dad was a huge Dave Stieb fan, and he would call me into the living room to catch his outings when he was there. But I was like 5 or 6. And, as much as I loved baseball at the time, my attention span was about 2 innings. So I never really got to experience Dave Stieb. But it is cool to look at what he did and realize Dave Stieb, and Len, maybe you can touch on this event. He feels like the first true superstar of the Toronto Blue Jays franchise, a franchise that kind of went starless for the first half decade of its tenure.
Arguably even longer, sure. And he had a great hook for his bio too. I mean, here you are talking about some California kid who comes out of a Midwestern college, and he's an outfielder who nonetheless in July of 78 was chosen by the Sporting News, which was regarded as the sporting Bible, as part of their All-America 1978 college team with other well-known players, luminaries like Steve Balboni, Kirk Gibson, Huey Brooks. They roll on this team. But he's picked as a center fielder with decent pop. Blake can talk to this, but a 394 batting average. And he set the Southern Illinois University was his college, and he set the record for home runs at that point. And all of it while hardly pitching. I mean, again, I'm going to leave Blake to do this one because we each have areas when we're working on this. This is the sidebar where we kind of take a bit more expertise or a bit more attention than the other guy, because otherwise there'd just be too much going on, rattling around each of our heads. So I tend to think that Blake is sort of our college era guy. But basically, you know, that backstory was compelling as heck. And it was not a sophisticated baseball media in Toronto at the time. You know, some of them had probably been covering the Argonauts, so they've been doing CFL in the warm weather months. They might have just been doing hockey otherwise. And now suddenly they're working a baseball beat. And it's a whole bunch of kids who at first in 77, 78 were probably just thrilled to be there because suddenly some of these guys who were sort of offcasts and AAA players who were never going to get a sniff with their established teams are now playing for whatever passed for Major League Bucks at the time. But in comes this kid who it's second nature to him. I mean, he's an awfully good player, and it's almost immediately apparent. But he's playing with a bunch of guys who are probably playing out the string or who are in over their heads or whatever. And it starts to stand out. And maybe because there was this focus on win-loss records at that point with the 8-8 record the first year and the 12-15 record the second year, it might have taken a while for people to really recognize just how good he was. But, the All-Star Game selections were an indication. And although you don't know about the underlying numbers until a later point in time, you have this sense because he's always pitching close games. He's always pitching exciting, dramatic games. And he does that more often than any of the other guys in the team. And he just seems like he's a cut above. And that's what sort of took us through the first couple of years. And when the whole team starts to emerge from, again, that expansion baby fat by 82 with a good, competitive, but still losing club, it's apparent that he's a step above everybody else on the team. And that makes him appointment viewing, or if you're listening on radio, which is where the bulk of the games were at the time, appointment listening.
It's kind of interesting that one of the detracting factors about Stieb was he had a prickly personality and maybe he didn't get along with some of the media. But it does feel like in today's sporting world, he just kind of was handed bad cards for the time that he was coming up in, because the truth is he wasn't so bad if you look around the landscape right now at what some of the guys are doing. So I don't know, Blake, if you want to touch on this and just kind of some of the things that may have just been put on him that was maybe a little undeserved.
Yeah, I think foundationally what makes Stieb interesting is he had the talent and he had the underlying numbers to back it up. So when you were watching it, it was fascinating to see. But also what made him unique was this Shakespearean drama tragedy almost that started to unfold over the years where, you have something in Stieb that was unparalleled at the time in terms of, as Len referenced, in 1978, his first year at Southern Illinois, he's an All-American. The Blue Jays draft him in June, really saying to him, hey, you might be a quicker path to the majors if you try this pitching thing out. And Stieb had pitched about 17 innings at Southern Illinois, just sort of in relief, sort of mop up. So the scouts, Al Lamacchia and Bobby Maddox, saw something. They allowed him to come to Dunedin, single A ball in late July of 78, hitting and pitching. Stieb quickly figured out that, the quickest way to this after my 192 average in 1978 is going to be pitching. But then by June of the next year, he's pitching in the majors. So imagine you're drafted in June of 78 with 17 innings in college under your belt. And now you're sitting there on this team that, again, Stieb was a perfectionist, obviously, one of the most super competitive people by all accounts. And here he is, the perfectionist on one of the worst teams ever. People are just playing out the string. He's the one who's, desiring to win at such a great degree. And he's getting a rep because every time he sees himself as an outfielders of the Blue Jays making errors or just not having that drive, he's looking at them like, what the heck? I could have done this. And what nobody taught him, now you have a lot of media training, of course, in baseball. So what nobody taught Steve at the time was, hey, remember, you're a pitcher now and you have to rely on everybody else. Whereas a center fielder, it was just you against the pitcher. And if you got an out or if you caught the ball or dropped the ball, it was just you. Now 8 other people are being affected on the defense or affecting your performance. And then, of course, whether they're hitting or not is a big thing. So now all of a sudden he's earning this reputation as, somebody who glares and stares at his teammates. And he did. And he got called out in the first 2 or 3 years, but it was a rep that he started to earn. And then, of course, all that Shakespearean drama starts to unfold to the not getting 20 wins, not getting a Cy Young, not getting the no-hitter in the perfect games, that just really launches him into a figure of extreme interest into the 80s and into the early 90s.
Right place, wrong time kind of thing.
Yeah, a California kid in the frozen tinderland of downtown Canada, right at the time, with a team that just wasn't up to his level of talent. And again, not having, remember Roy Halladay's #1 message was, right, as soon as I let that ball go, I forget that pitch and I'm on to the next pitch. The ABCs of pitching, right? Steve had a center fielder mentality, and with that perfectionist streak, it was almost impossible to get past. That's why, when we talked to Stephen Brunt, he said when he covered Steve that it was like the man never seemed to got enjoyment, whether it was a win, loss. It was just always he could have done better. But we love that as fans because we're like, no, we want this. We want a championship mentality, and it was just so interesting to see. That tension between him and the media sort of play out as fans, because all we cared about was that he would win.
Well, his intensity always popped off the screen. I mean, even as a kid, I recognized how intense and how focused the man was once he hit the mound.
We were asked in 2023 to provide a video for the San Jose Sports Hall of Fame. They were inducting him into their local Hall of Fame, and there were a few other ball players who were in there, and it was just sort of seen as an oversight on behalf of the selection committee that they'd missed somebody who happened to have the most, well, for instance, WAR, the most All-Star game appearances, et cetera, to ever come out of the South Bay. And when we began putting together the clips, one of the things they asked us for was, can you maybe compile a bunch of like his hit batters, and can you also maybe find some footage of him getting really mad and stomping around on the mound? And it's not as easy an ask as you'd think. Blake actually alluded to this, the fact that at the beginning, I mean, they by 82, which is year 6, they had, I think it was 41 games televised. So, it was hard to find footage on this, but nonetheless, we found a few things, and some of them are from later in his career, and they exist. But yeah, it was legendary. And I do have a very kind of fuzzy recollection of watching a couple of post-game media scrums with him, where he's just shooting fire out of his eyes, and just sort of these short clipped responses, and you can just see that this guy is really unhappy. I don't have as much or as clear a memory of him on the mound giving the glares to people, but the stories are legion, and he's admitted as much anyway that it was a problem. Ironically, he seemed to sort of circumvent a lot of that bad behavior when he had his worst year. He was trying to be a nice guy in 1986, and it wasn't working out too well. But yeah, that intensity, again, he was riveting. And anytime we've listened to some of the media personnel who covered him at the time, sort of really well-known figures around this area, like Larry Milson and Stephen Brunt from the Globe and Mail, and Alan Ryan and Dave Perkins from the Toronto Star, Bob Elliott from the Toronto Sun, and so on and so forth, is the one thing that they all remember is just how difficult he could be and how you had to wait him out in the post-game scrums because he was sometimes so angry he didn't want to talk. And he just stand. There are a few stories that we've published actually, where like the lead in the newspaper account of the game is, he wouldn't turn around for a few minutes at his locker while they all just kind of waited before he'd turn around and start talking. And he'd always give good answers, but it took a while to get that. And so some of them would start to circulate around the room and get all their quotes from everybody else, and then come back and hope that he was still, there and that he's willing to talk. But yeah, I mean, it was you used the word fascinating in terms of describing him. And I think that's exactly the word that Keegan Matheson has used in talking about him this summer too. Just saying he fascinates me.
Yeah.
because there were some other pitchers in this organization, some who are with the team right now. Max Scherzer is a good example. Some who were here just fairly recently, and some who were, legend. And they all had an intensity about them. But there was something about him. It never tipped over into like an overt rudeness or a crudeness or anything like that. And that maybe is important. Maybe it speaks to some kind of maturity or a control he did have. But when he was out there on the mound, I just get the impression it was really difficult to bottle those emotions.
It
Really
also
hard.
kind of laid the groundwork for other pitchers to be intense around this market. Like look at Doc. You just brought up
Yeah. Yeah.
Scherzer, right? Like and I'm not saying they had the same sort of personality as Steve or the same sort of energy, but they also had an intensity that, a market that was new to baseball obviously had to get used to, right?
Yes, very much so. Don't talk to pitchers on the day they pitch
And
at all.
I think he was humbled. I mean, with our
Yeah.
Twitter account and with our YouTube channel as well, right? We're a warts and all. We're not here to, just
Hmm.
overdo it in terms of sycophantic praise. So, he has admitted that he was difficult early on, that he did glare teammates over on, but it was interesting to see him mature over the years, all the way down to even one of his toughest years, the 1992, World Series, which unfortunately he didn't get to pitch in. Still won 4 games that year, but getting to see him and talk to him during the parade was something that we had a moment with him.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he came back in 1998, we automatically, as soon as we found out March 13th that he was coming back, front cover of the Toronto Sun. We were doing websites at the time for other things, so we built a website immediately. We actually reached out to Syracuse because he was going to come back through, Dunedin and then into Syracuse, the AAA ballpark for the Jays.
Earned his spurs. Yep.
We reached out and said, "Hey, can we get press passes to come in and cover him? Because we've got this Dave Steve website." And they said, "Sure." So all of a sudden, there we are interviewing Steve in Rochester with Joe
Wow.
Altobelli and Garth
Yeah, that's
Ord and
crazy.
other. We're standing on the field in Buffalo when Syracuse is playing Buffalo with Rosie DiMano
And
and
John
John
Lott.
Lott and everyone
Yeah.
else. And again, you saw a much more mellower Steve, even into the 2000s. In 2001, I have a great long form videotape of a Blue Jays celebration that they did, just, alumni callback. And, my son's mother was there. Son was about 1.5. And we've got footage. Steve came over to me and the thing, and you can see video of me holding my son and Steve, playing with my son and just us chatting back and forth. So,
The tender side of Steve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
for the reputation that he did earn, and he earned it in the early days, again, it's media has to do a better job of making sure you're encompassing an entire perspective of a person's career versus just the easy,
Yes.
oh yeah, he did this during a particular period of time, therefore he is that.
I
There
think
was a
where the
lot of that.
really, yeah, there is.
Even in like in 96, 98. In 96, he was the first. He and George Bell went in together on they were the initial entrance, I guess, on the level of excellence. And even then, you can imagine that these are all pieces that we've put up on Twitter before, various video clips of things that we've kept over the years or sourced online. Half the media guys asking him questions are just like, "So you were a really nasty guy. Are you still that way?" And so he's always on the defensive.
Right.
Actually, you can't listen to a Buck Martinez piece on Dave without him referencing the one time Steve lost at Comiskey 1. This was Chicago's ballpark until 1990. And Steve has, and I'm not kidding, I tried to go through the filters just to make it as punishing as possible. And among anybody who ever made at least 4 starts, which is a pretty tiny sample, and he made 13 or 14. He's got the lowest bloody ERA of anyone ever pitched there who made at least 4 starts, 142. He's 10-1. So, I mean, he never lost in Chicago, but for one time. And this is when Buck called for a certain pitch, and Greg Lazinski, who was a masher, hits a 3-run homer. And the story, which I guess is not apocryphal, is of Steve on the mound going, throwing his arms up like this. And Martinez wanted to kill him in the dugout.
Yeah.
Like he's like, okay, let's fight. And he was still mad at him the next day. But that's when Dave sort of started to recognize, and this is either 82 or 3. So it's an improving team by this point. And I think that's sort of the turning point. He's like, I got to stop doing this. There was one other turning point, which was with his agent saying, you've got to start to give a little bit back. That's another story that we might get to. But yeah, I mean, it's just that eventually he just had to start to pay the price for this, or else it was going to continue to be a problem.
I think one of the endearing things about Steve too is once you get past his personality and you just kind of revel in the intensity that was within the man, and the fact that he was in pursuit of something, and it's really
Yeah.
interesting. Once he had that taste of a possible no hitter, he became almost incensed with it. You could tell, like, I mean, heck, his first one in '88. I mean, he went out and our first attempt in '88 when he got to the ninth inning there, he went out and did it again. His next start out, right?
6 days later. Yeah.
6 days later. And like
Yeah.
very, very impressive. Do one of you want to touch on it's I love the fact he accomplished it. Like I love the
Oh,
fact that we're even
absolutely.
sitting here September 2nd being like, hey, this is the anniversary of the first and the only no-hitter in Toronto Blue
We call
Jays
it Happy
history.
International Dave Steve No Hitter Day. Hashtag.
Exactly,
That's what it
exactly.
is.
And it's an accomplishment that so few do, so few chase, and the fact that he got so close so many times and reached it is just such a story. It's
I don't
such one of those sports stories for the ages.
I don't know
Ironically,
why there was so. Yeah, you go
sorry,
go.
okay.
It's okay.
Ironically, his first attempt at getting a no hitter into the ninth was today, right? 1985.
Well, we're filming this on September 2nd, but on
Yes.
August 24th, 85. So just 40 years ago, a few days ago, was the first time and it was Comiskey Park. What else is new? He goes through 8 innings. We didn't publish this, but I'm going to do this off the top of my head. Steve, by the end of 85, his arm is falling off. And this is what led to all his problems in 86. And they continued in 87, and quite frankly, probably stayed with him the rest of his career. They abused him. He made 220 starts and two other relief appearances in those first 7 years. And that includes being called up midway through 79. And it also includes the fact that 81 was a strike season. This is a stat I've never actually put it out there on Twitter, but it fascinates me. So 222 games, 220 starts is something Jake DeGrom just passed earlier this summer. And when you go into Baseball Reference, you can sum all of these things. And I was looking for something else just to see what his comps were with other people after 222 games / 220 starts. And here's what I found. And I had to go back. You're using filters, which you can do on Baseball Reference, whether it's integration in 1947 or expansion in 61 or the divisional era in 69, whatever. I had to go back all the way to 1945, which is the end of World War II, before I found somebody who beat this. In those first 222 appearances, guess who faced the most batters in history? Well, not history, but 80 years. Dave Steve.
Wow.
Fourth most innings, and the only ones ahead of him are Seaver, Juan Marichal, and I'm forgetting Bert Blyleven. So all of them first tier Hall of Famers, and none of them faced more batters. So I mean, he was getting used. It's an amazing statistic, the fact that he was getting used that much. So he gets to this point in August of '85, and the elbow is screaming, and he's gotten through 8 innings, and he's just trying to basically get through the ninth on slop. And a couple of very light hitting players on the White Sox hit home runs off him on his first and third pitches of the inning, and he's out of the game. So he gets credit for 8 innings, which is exactly what Bowden Francis's line looked like in both
Yes.
of his games last year. 8 innings, even though he pitched to batters in the ninth. And that was the first time. But then, yeah, you're right. I mean, September 24th, 88, September 30th, 88.
To be
Now
one out away, like my
it's a
goodness.
cruelty. Yeah.
Twice.
Twice.
And a
Twice in
Back
a
to
week.
row.
back.
Yeah. With a
But I
long
think
winter ahead, you don't even have a chance to do anything about it. You know what? The Jays, from 83 to 93, they won 86 games minimum in all 11 of those years, which under the current 6 teams per league playoff system would have put them in the playoffs all 11 years. And I can only imagine what would have happened if, because it was a different mentality for us. Your dad would know all about this.
Mhm.
You get to a year like 84 and you're just chasing the Tigers all year long. And it was exciting, but so frustrating. And every time they'd have their bullpen blow another game, and they blew something like 22 games, 24 games that year. It was just horrific. You'd fall a little bit further behind this team that was just not going to give up the lead. And
The
that's
fan
what it
base
was
of
like.
today doesn't have the metal to deal with a bullpen
No.
like that.
Oh yeah, no, not at all. But I mean, back then, just everything was so amplified, and maybe that's why there's a lot of frustration with the sort of upper tier players on the team, like a George Bell and like a Dave Steve, because I think some of them recognized it's not going going to happen every year, not back then. And so if you blow a chance, yeah, I can only imagine what would have happened if Steve 88, coming off of those 3 successive shutouts and 2 successive one hitters, what he would have been like in the 88 playoffs. That would have been nuts. I wish,
Yeah.
Yeah,
we don't
and
have much
Scott,
of that.
and Scott, you mentioned all the near misses leading up to this date, September 2nd, where we're
Yes.
recording this. Just to tease it out to the fans here who are listening, not often happening on podcasts, right? At the end of this cast, we are going to watch some of those near misses and footage from the no hitter so that we can talk about it and you can
Oh
actually
no.
see it. You can actually see it for yourself. But
Yeah.
it's so fascinating to think that in this, people always ask us, oh, how would Dave Stieb, fare in today's world, right? Take all those innings that Len just talked about, all those batters that he faced, and with respect to people like Chris Snell, who've won 2 World Series, 2 Cy Youngs on 5-inning games the whole way through, it would be fascinating to see what Stieb could have done in terms of the amount of
It's the same as yours.
yeah, in terms of the amount of strikeouts, like
I
other than
know.
would have been fascinating to see then how if he had just been able to unleash for 5 innings, 6 innings at a time, the kind of numbers that he would have put up. You see with Gosman now, with the amount of strikeouts
Sure.
these guys get, the amount of swing and miss that people go through. Right now,
Also,
Steve would
really
probably just
soft
have a lot of
contact.
fun.
You
Steve
know,
would
like,
probably have a lot of fun with
yeah.
batters these days going for those 3 true outcomes. So it'd be really interesting to see him in this era just doing what he was doing with just shorter bursts.
Well,
And
I
the
mean,
one, if you
it's kind of even said, like the sweeper that everyone was talking was kind of like a new pitch a couple of years ago. I know Pitching Ninja, friend of the show, Rob Feldman,
yeah,
came out and he was
he's
like,
good.
"This is not a new pitch. Dave Stieb threw this all the time."
That's a frisbee. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, if it's a beautiful one, oh my Lord. Yeah, no, his clips are nice. We just watch those going. It's sort of like pitching porn. It's really neat.
Yeah.
But he was a really soft contact pitcher too. I mean, like his BABIP and ISO numbers are really low. Like literally the BIP for his career is something like 263. And most guys revert to the mean and they're kind of in the 290s and above. The major league average is usually around 300. But I mean, and I'm not kidding, like it's really low. And his agent was Bob Lamont, who is still active in the NFL. He's the one who's got about 9 or 10 head coaches as clients. He doesn't go for anything else beyond head coaches, but he was Steve's history teacher in high school. And so he basically took over Steve's affairs in 83 when he'd gone through a sequence of really bad agents. And Lamont also had Pat Henkin as a client. He didn't have many baseball clients, but that's why Steve and Henkin were so close, because they had that connection. And Henkin would tell the story about how, per Lamont, Steve would go sometimes a couple of months before he got hit hard. I mean, he might give up if you're looking at his line, 4 hits, 6 hits, or whatever, but they all seem to be just like seeing eye singles and then maybe 1 or 2 doubles up the gap or something. He didn't get tattooed. One of the stats we've run occasionally is this is his first full year. And through July 21st, which is how many starts it is, 23, 24 starts, he'd only given up 2 home runs.
Jeez.
Can you imagine getting to the 26th of July and you've only given up 2 home runs?
Wow.
There are a handful of other pitchers who are tied with that. They're obviously all pitchers from the 70s and 80s and 60s, nobody from the modern era. But can you imagine? That's what Blake's talking about in terms of just like, the modern batter not being able to catch up to what he was putting down, because it was wild. So yeah, little numbers like that. We love throwing things like that out there on the feed.
So when you look at Dave Stieb's repertoire, his numbers, I mean, this feels like he should be in the Hall of Fame. Am I jumping off the deep end here? Like, am I missing something?
I don't think so, Blake.
No, I think you can look at you can look at it from 2 angles, right? Which is, okay, what makes him great? What are the numbers and the accomplishments that he has? And then what makes him Hall of Fame worthy? Len has put together a really impressive coterie of numbers that speak to the various peaks that he has going on. But, to frame it, right, the idea of you've got a 15-year veteran who, again, up until that freak injury in 1991, which really ended the counting part of his career, if you will, and the lack of awards that he would have received for all those Cy Youngs that he would have missed, really have forced us to look at what do those underlying numbers, those peaks look like. Because when you look at those numbers, you've got consensus across the board for all those people who covered him, whether it's Jeff Blair, whether it's Buck, whether it's Stephen Brunt, Mike Wilner, all those, like, they're not putting their professional reputations on the line to say that Steve should be in the Hall of Fame just because, you know, they want to suck up to him or they want to, you know, be a sycophant as well. So as Len sort of pours over some of those, it really does make a legit Hall of Fame case. And the question is then, what's really holding him back? So Len, if you grab some of those newspaper headlines, I think we can then talk about what's holding this guy back and what are next steps look like if he's even going to get into the Hall of Fame at this point. Because in November, the way they changed the committees around again, I think it was in 2022 when we first started doing this. And we're like, ugh. So they changed it again to focus on anybody from now, 1980 onwards, right? It was, so he's going to have some competition. They vote in November, which is when, you know, Fred McGriff got into the Hall of Fame for the induction for next year. So between now and November, it's going to take, you know, a bit of a groundswell of things like we're doing here today to highlight what Len could dive a little deeper into here to make sure it's in people's consciousness.
All right, numbers man, lay it on.
All right. Well, maybe I'm just going to adjust my mic here. We sort of think that Steve's case is a three-part argument. And it's not much different than any other case where a player's career was truncated. You kind of have to tune the fork to make the third argument work. But he pitched just under 2,900 innings. And back in the day, there were a lot of guys who were pitching 33, 35. Jack Morris pitched 930 more innings than Steve did. So, you know, if it's counting stats you're looking for, they're all ahead of him in strikeouts, for instance. And the win total of 176 seems kind of modest. And he's said as much himself. I don't think based on my numbers that I deserve to be in. But then people started talking even to him about some of his numbers. And so the good news for Blue Jay fans and for Dave Stieb fans is that the first two arguments are easy and compelling. The first argument is that his peak is inner circle Hall of Fame great, both in terms of how actually great he was and how much better he was than anyone else during what is a significant time frame. And in that peak, he is as good as the field. Which means if you're picking pitchers like in a sports pool, you have as good a chance of winning by sticking with Steve every single year as you would by picking any other pitcher with your first choice. The second argument is that his prime is maybe not inner circle, but it's Cooperstown worthy. That up to the day that he gets injured in 1991, he is on a Hall of Fame track. And he just needs to stick around to pad his counting stats. And the third argument is the tricky one. And we're sort of invoking this, the Sandy Koufax rule or the Kirby Puckett rule, which is the what if argument. It's where he's at the intersection of his second peak, because let's remember, he had a down year in 86 and a wonky year in 87, but by 88, he's back. It's the intersection of his second peak and the team that's been built around him at the time he gets hurt. It's 1991, and the Jays are a purpose-built near dynasty that will easily win the AL East each year and will convincingly win back-to-back World Series. So to go back to it, for peak, we're not just even talking about the 82 to 85 period that people always talk about with him. You know, he should have won a Cy Young. He should have won 2 or 3. He was in the hunt for 4. We're actually pushing it out to 7 years, the first 7 years of his career. So right from the moment he steps onto a major league mound. So that's 7 years. For prime, we're talking about the 13 seasons up to the moment of his 91 injury. And we're not even cherry picking. We're including the 2 down years. And then for the what if, we're looking at that 88 to 91 return to form, Steve. And this is the guy that everyone remembers because he's throwing all the one hitters. And he's back to being the clear ace on the best team in his division. And we sort of hate to settle for simply citing like war, R war, B war, F war, war. What is it good for? But as an analyst and sabermetrician who knows way more than I do, tweeted earlier this week, he said, war may not be perfect, but it doesn't have to be. It just has to be better than the next best thing, which it is. And so, I mean, considering how long people used wins as their metric for whether you were any good, it's maybe okay to at least open the door with the war argument. We know that there are a lot of underlying stats, and the cool thing is he's got them. Peak, those first 7 years. In the live ball era, which is 1920, so we've got a 106-year sample now, he is still 8th in WAR for your first 7 years in the major leagues. The ones ahead of him are Seaver, Lefty Grove, Robin Roberts, Roger Clemens, Bert Blyleven, Clayton Kershaw, and Juan Marichal. 5 of them are Hall of Fame. Clemens
and one of
an
them's a cheater. Yeah, so like,
and for WAA, which is wins above average, he's 10th. For RE24, he's 12th. I mean, he's right there. He's inner circle. For the prime,
this is of all time, right? This is like all time. This is not just for
6 years, which is basically when the ball is one of the fans when you hit it hard. For prime, which is 79-91, that's 13 years. He's still 25th, and 20 of the 24 ahead of him are Hall of Famers. And the 4 who are not in the Hall of Fame are Clemens, Kershaw,
Hey Scott,
Chapman,
are we losing Len there for Scott?
Yeah. Oh, I think you're back.
Okay. You
Okay,
might want
I
to.
could try that again. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to
We'll
Prime.
cut that. We'll cut that little bit out. But yeah,
Yeah,
give us
Sure.
we're going to loop back.
Give us that bit again.
So for peak, whereas he's 8th in the live ball era for WAR, for his prime, those first 13 years, up to the point where he gets injured in 1991, he's 25th. Which is not inner circle, but it's still basically you're just waiting to pad your counting stats. 20 of the 24 pitchers ahead of him at that point are in the Hall of Fame, and the 4 who aren't are named Clemens, Kershaw, Scherzer, and Verlander. So he's right there. Halliday's 26th. Steve's actually one ahead of him, and that's Halladay through 2010, by which point he's moved on to Philly. The other point is the second peak. That's the 88 to 91 period with all of, it's the gray road uniform, and it's the team that's winning the division, and it's all the near miss no hitters. He is 8th in WAR for that period, but he's not getting used for as many innings at that stage. His RE24 is 4th, ERA plus is 5th, hits per 9 is 3rd, which makes sense when you think he's not giving up any hits. The only ones ahead of him are Big Unit and Nolan Ryan. WHIP, he's 3rd. ERA, he's 3rd too. The only ones ahead of him, Clemens is a clear mark ahead of everybody. Saberhagen's a tick ahead of Steve, but he's right in there with the Viola, Candiotti, Chuck Finley, Nolan Ryan kind of cohort.
Honestly, you're blowing my mind right now, Len.
I know, and this is the stuff that we want to get to people. I'll sort of finish this part by just saying that 91, and this is again that this sort of second peak of his, this is the where is he at when he gets hurt thing. That 91 to 93 team is different from any other team he's had in his healthy prime. I mean, for one, he now has the league's undisputed best defensive second baseman and center fielder up the middle. He's never had that good a defense. Secondly, he's now become a 6 or a 7 inning pitcher, maybe a little before some of his cohorts trimming his innings, but he can afford it now because he's got peak Dwayne Ward and Tom Henke closing. And thirdly, it's a purpose-built hitting, defending, pitching team that does something no other Jays team has ever done, which is to make it to the World Series, to win the World Series, and to do both things twice. And this is the club, and this is what Buck talks about all the time, that put Jack Morris in his spot in 1992 and sees him go 21-6 with a 4.04 ERA and a 1.01 ERA plus. Just going to throw one number at you here. I'm going to look at my screen. Clemens in 90 with Boston. He goes 21-6, and so does Jack 2 years later with Toronto. Clemens' ERA that year is 1.93. Jack is 4.04. Clemens' ERA plus is 2.11. Jack's is 1.01. Clemens' WAR is 10.4. Jack's is 2.8. And they pitch, there's a 12 inning difference in terms of the innings they pitch. Clemens actually pitches a few fewer. So if he'd pitched a bit more, then maybe he would have had even higher numbers. Who knows? But they both go 21-6. And so that's the team that Steve is leaving behind because he can't pitch for him because the poor guy is hurt. So when Buck says that peak Steve would win, and the number varies depending upon how Buck feels, 25 or 28 games of those clubs, my first instinct is to think, well, that's just about impossible, Buck. But then I look at Jack's 92 and who knows? That's what we got. There's more, but that's the numbers part.
Honestly, those numbers are absolutely gobsmacking, and it's pretty obvious to me that he probably is being looked over here. And I think that some of the things that hurt him is it probably doesn't help that he was a prickly guy with the writers and on a Canadian team. Is that like we see Blue Jays kind of snubbed sometimes for awards for a long time. We've seen this, and Blake, do you feel that that's part of what kind of held Steve back from Hall of Fame consideration?
Yeah, he's got some things definitely working against him. His era, which seems to be this bizarre, unique era where the writers all of a sudden transitioned into looking at wins and did you have any hardware, right? And based on that, based on the lack of wins, he was denied the hardware. So that's a concern. Yeah, playing for the Blue Jays, up north didn't help his exposure in the slightest. And, even people like Stephen Brunt and others have admitted, yeah, we're human beings as writers, right? And if you're a jackass to us, is it going to, endear us to you? And if it's based on the people side, and you got to remember too that, for his lack of counting stats, the fact that he came back in 1998 and proved to be an effective pitcher at the age of 41 shows you what he could have done, but it also really hurt his Hall of Fame chances because it bumped his eligibility another 5 years down the path to a group of writers who would have had no idea and would have not in his
lack of familiarity.
So, but the Carlos Delgado slight speaks to what you mentioned to Scott with the are people really fundamentally focused on Jays? I mean, I wonder what would have happened to Halladay if he had stayed with the Jays and had nothing happening in Philadelphia, and no winning, no nothing. That would have been interesting to see. So now it's really about, okay, what is the future going to look like? What is the case for getting him into the Hall, right? And you're talking about a couple of things, right? So it would be really helpful if this front office, who has nobody there to, wave the flags, kiss the babies, et cetera, because, with the unfortunate passing of Roy, and with the scandal that, Roberto Alomar found him in, there's nobody else retired. And you have this number one pitcher for almost all of your stats would be great to embrace. So we're hoping, and there's little kernels planted out there, that the 50th anniversary of the Blue Jays will lead this front office to finally, acknowledge the synthesis between, the past and the present. And maybe we'll see a statue. Maybe we'll get a
statue holding Ed Rogers' briefcase. Come on, guys.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what we need.
So, and the other concerns is that, it's Steve's indifference as well, right? He is not out there promoting himself nonstop. He is not, the God bless him, the Joe Carter of the world, who's got a baseball, who's got a golf tournament, who is open to return for almost anything and talk about it. So we're going to have to see what that's going to look like. It's almost Tim Raines like, when a particular writer whose name we won't mention really took on the case that, hey, we need to have people look at Tim Raines in a different light. So laying some of the groundwork, what we're doing here with you, Scott, will this sort of galvanize people by November to take another look at him and give him a second chance?
I'm up at my cottage right now. By the way, I counted it. I am 16 steps from where I was sitting when Steve pitched his no-hitter. I'm in a different room right now. It's very cool. But earlier this summer, Jack Morris, of all people, there's a Rogers store that opened up here. This is on Big Bay Point, Lake Simcoe. And Jack Morris was here. Well, why don't you call Steve? He's got a passport. He can fly. He's been here before, but there is a disconnect, and it's weird. And we'll see things like as there are loads of fans who are basically making the point of getting to as many ballparks as they can. And they're coming from all over the continent. And I'll see someone saying, well, now, park number 21, Rogers Center, no statues. No sort of hagiography, no Hall of Fame, not an awful lot. Blake,
you're acting like there's not a Ted Rogers statue out front of Rogers.
But it's true. Like, there's not an awful lot. Blake, you've been to a couple of parks where I guess it's incredible what they've done. Right? Atlanta comes to mind.
The Pirates, Pittsburgh. Yeah.
Yep. Detroit, Cleveland, they're every single one of them, except unfortunately for Toronto. So Shapiro and Atkins, they've earned a little bit of cred back in this run in 2025, and they're going to get an opportunity with the current fan base. They're going to get an opportunity in the 50th anniversary to hopefully not blow it and do right by the legacy of those who came before. So yeah, we're hopeful, but cautious.
So that number that Blake is wearing on his shirt right now, that number has been in circulation every year except for, ironically, this year, but also 2014 and 15. Someone's always wearing number 37. And Louis Verlin came over from Minnesota, and he was wearing 37. And so when he took 77, I thought, I wonder if there's something afoot there, because you've got a guy under control who is a highly regarded pitcher. You think that he'd maybe be attached to the number and he'd ask to keep it. But I thought it was curious that they didn't give it out this time. And I don't know if there's something afoot, but they need to do something. I know even the organizations who have said before that we won't retire the numbers of those who are not, if we don't have a Hall of Famer, or if the player in question isn't a Hall of Famer, they're starting to go back on that now. So Rick Kuzman and Mike Goodman, they were retired for the Mets. And Fernando Alonso, well, that whole week can't dedicate him a while. The Hall of Famer is none of them going to the Hall. But it would be nice that the organization would do something, because I think over the years that would also have helped to increase his visibility. Because otherwise it feels like it's us sort of against the world, just trying to get the name out there and start the conversation. But little by little, we're seeing the fan base is now kind of into it. There are a lot of people on Twitter now who say, man, this guy's good. And that's cool. That's nice to see.
No, I agree. And you know what? A little bit of a tip of the hat to the past would go a long way here because what a storied past it is. Not just Dave Stieb, but Stieb definitely involved in it in a big way. And just a reminder to everyone here too to stick around because we are going to be watching some of these no-hitter moments coming up in just a few seconds here. So definitely a beautiful time to have you two gentlemen on the show, just celebrating Dave Stieb Day. Right, is no hitter September 2nd.
International No Hitter Dave Stieb Day. Yeah, I think I got that
National
wrong.
Dave Stieb no hitter
Dave
day
Stieb No Hitter Day.
here on the
There you
walk
go.
off. So honestly, Blake Bell, Len Lumbers, thank you so much, gentlemen. Check out their work, everybody, on Dave Stieb today. Honestly, nobody knows more than you two gentlemen, and if they do, I don't want to know anymore. No, I'm kidding. Honestly, you guys,
I
this
do
is
though.
so
It'd be nice to
awesome.
hang out with them.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you,
were
Scott.
like, let's open it up. We could have a third member. Yeah.
The more the merrier.
Come out and chat with us on September 4th at Baseball Town because we'll be there, Left Field Brewery, when Scott's putting on a show. We always show up, so we'll be, you'll see some Steve shirts running around there, and if you do, come and say hi.
Absolutely do. So again, Baseball Town, Left Field Brewery in Liberty Village. Tickets for that are in the description. Thank you so much, gentlemen, and everyone. Stick around. Here is Dave Stieb's no-hitter bids, and then he accomplishes it. All right, folks, this is my favorite part of what we're doing here. It is Dave Stieb no-hitter day, and we are actually going to view his near misses, and then we're going to actually view him accomplishing something that has only been done once in Toronto Blue Jays history. September 2nd is the big day. We're going way back here to celebrate Dave Stieb, and I've got two of the best to take it through it with us. Blake Bell, Len Lumbers of Dave Stieb today. Let's kick things off. We'll throw to you here, Blake. Let's start with this first clip. What are we watching?
For the anticipation, for the build-up to September 2nd, 1990, we're going to watch his three near misses, just very short clips of this. So this is September 24th, 1988 in Cleveland Municipal Stadium, the terrible Manny Lee hop, 2 outs in the ninth, no hitter on the line. Len, take it away.
Dave Stieb came within a hair of perfection. 8 strikeouts, he gave up just 2 walks and 1 hit batter. Stieb had a no-hitter going into the 9th inning against the Cleveland Indians tonight. But this is the one that Dave Stieb will never forget.
He's ready. Here's the 2-2 windup. A swing and a bouncer to second. Big hop over the head of Lee into right center. It took a bad hop. It went over Manny Lee's head into right center for a base hit.
Stieb is the 7th pitcher to lose a no-hit bid in the 9th inning of a game this year. With the win, his record improves to 15-8.
This is not a bad hop. It's a fucking bloodbath. Manny Lee does every last thing his human body allows him to do, throwing himself into the sky to get his glove on it. He's powerless.
There's one of them.
And that really, just spoke to the Shakespearean tragedy of Dave Stieb's career, which is just so close and yet so far away. So now, to make it even worse, we are going to go 6 days later in Toronto, where Dave Stieb is facing Baltimore, and he does the exact same thing. He gets to 2 outs in the 9th inning with no hits allowed, and then this happens.
Stieb receiving a standing ovation when he came out for the 9th inning. He had his slider working, he had his fastball working, he had his curveball working. Everything was working for Super Dave. But pinch hitter Jim Traver here, 2 out, 2 strikes, and it drops in to break up the no-hitter. Stieb just 1 strike away from a no-hitter for the 2nd consecutive outing. You talk about being snake-bitten, but he bears down a little later in the game. And this is the final out. And Dave Stieb, a tremendous performance here, once again, shutting out the opposition. 4-0 the final. Toronto beating Baltimore, and for Dave Stieb, it was so close, but so far.
I felt like I had good command of my pitches, threw a lot of strikes. The difference between last game and this game was I think I got ahead of more hitters and threw more strikes. And otherwise, it was exactly the same. It was a good pitch to Traber? Yeah. I don't even think it was a strike.
That clip John Boyes in that 2022 documentary that everybody still references makes this statistical claim that the odds of somebody getting to the last out, and this is just based on the number of times there have been no hitters, the number of games that have been played in Major League Baseball history, and the odds of somebody getting to that point and losing the no hitter in both instances on the last batter, 1 in 241 million. Those are long odds. And so somebody had to do it, and it just happened to be our hometown guy. Crazy.
Well,
So,
let's
yeah.
go take a look at taking crazy to the next level, because that was
Yes.
the end of the 1988 season. But in August of 1989, it got even one step worse.
We're at 2 near misses, and it gets worse.
It does.
We're not even talking about 2 other actual misses.
He has had unbelievable stuff all night long. Hard, late-breaking slider. An unbelievable performance here tonight. Twice last year with Roberto Kelly at the plate. But twice last year, Steve got this far in the ball game, only to give up a base hit with 2 down. That first pitch was a ball to Kelly, who struck out in the 3rd. He struck out in the 6th. Inside, 2 balls and no strikes. Line to left field. No! A base hit. Oh no!
Wow.
That was I mean,
Astounding.
he talked about the over the top curveball that he developed that helped him get all these no hitters, near misses. He had like 5 of these almost one hitters or near misses. I think 5 actually one hitters in that 88 to 89 period, which doesn't even count this near perfect game, because he gave up a second hit and a run on top of this. So,
and on the 26th of August, when he throws a 1-hitter against Milwaukee, and this time it's a ball that just a 2-hopper that bounds out of Kelly Gruber's glove at 3rd, and he can't even make the throw. Gruber actually starts arguing with the scorer through the media, I guess, over the next sort of 24 hours. And we had this interesting thing where this off-field official has kind of become a known commodity. Everybody knows the name all of a sudden, Joe Sawchuk. And Sawchuk is like, no, that's a hit, and it will always be a hit. And what it means is that if you count this game, he's either had a no-hitter, a no-hit bid, or a 1-hit complete game in 6 of his last 48 starts. That's once every 2 months.
Wild.
It is pretty crazy.
Just insane.
Yeah.
So why don't we now move to the elation, to the victory moments? No one was expecting it. September 2nd, 1990, Len and I were on the phone back and forth that day because John McEnroe was in the U.S. Open. I think it was
fourth round. Yeah.
We were flipping back when the Blue Jays would hit. We would flip back to watch John McEnroe, our other hero, a very Steve-like presence as well. So we had no idea this was coming, and we just didn't hope for it. So, Scott, do you have any specific, early memories of this time, or your first recollection of when you heard of this no-hitter that we're about to watch?
So I don't. Outside of the fact that my dad, being a huge Dave Stieb fan and knowing how close he had gotten so many times, was absolutely over the moon when he actually accomplished it. Just to put in perspective, I was 7 years old at the time. And again, baseball, I had about a 4 to 5 inning window at this point before I was bored and would take off. So I do remember my dad calling me out of the room after it happened and seeing the post game and all the excitement and stuff like that. But it was kind of lost on me how big of a moment this truly was. I'm actually really excited to see this.
Well, we're going to watch some selected clips before we take a deeper dive, especially into the ninth inning where the tension just ratcheted up. So, Len, if you want to kick it off,
I will cue us. Yeah,
we're going to speak in and out as we go through this as well. It won't be just
I think so. Yeah,
watching the entire thing. So we'll get to comment on it as we go.
There was one noteworthy, really close call in Jay's lower before all of Dave Stieb's close calls, and that was September 28th, 82, and Jim Clancy took a perfect game into the ninth. Jim, rest in peace. We lost him earlier this summer. And it was one of the quickest games ever. It's done like in an hour 39 or something like that, or an hour 42. It was a 100-minute game, but that was the only other really noteworthy close call. There have been other one-hitters in Jay's lore, but this was something else. So Stieb, he is 16-5, fighting to get the ERA for the year under 3 at this point. He was in the All-Star game. It was his 7th selection to the Midsummer Classic. He's having a fine season, but the Jays, they've been wobbling. They had a tough week against Boston. They were shut out in 3 successive games. One of only 2 times that's ever happened in team history that they've been shut out 3 successive games. And they are now 6.5 games off the lead when they try for a Cleveland sweep on a Sunday afternoon. And you're going to hear a lot of loud sounds behind you. And what it is there's also the air show, and there are all these planes, like these F-15s that are ducking in around, and they create this really surreal atmosphere all game long. Anyway,
that's happening right now to me. The air show, they're prepping for the air show here. I'm down here at the lakefront, and I'm hearing the same thing. So it's
that's crazy.
Yeah. All right.
Here we go.
Let's enjoy.
From Cleveland, where the Blue Jays are looking to sweep this series against the Indians, they'll be sending out Dave Stieb today. For the 3rd time in a row, he's been looking for his 17th win of the season. He'll be facing left-hander Bud Black, who has had great success over the years against Toronto. He has an 11-4 record. Well, those Blue Jays, despite winning 3 in a row, still haven't picked up any ground on Boston. They trail by 6.5. Now here's Don Chevrier and Tommy Hutton.
I think for Jays fans today that have angst that we're only 3.5 up with the tiebreaker against Boston, we actually came back. We were down 6.5 in 1990. We actually came back to take a 1-game lead. We won't talk about what happened after that, but don't worry, Jays fans of today. You can maintain it. You can come back even if you lose it. So yeah, let's go check out your entirety of our clips of the no-hitter.
Yeah. All right, 2nd inning.
A couple of times after that pitch, Dave motioning without throwing the ball with his arm to get on top. He still hasn't found that groove that he likes to find.
Yeah, I think what's interesting here, right, is that he's even said that in the no-hitter, he didn't feel he had his best stuff, right? So he walked 4 guys. Pat Borders got him out of a couple of jams, which I think, we might see. But he still had that over-the-top curve and that slider going really well.
That's where I think with Pat Borders and Greg Myers, as they get more experience, you're going to have to take charge a little bit more back behind the plate. Go out and tell Dave Stieb when he's not getting on top.
Play at second base. He's gone. The throw is high, but they still nail Baerga. The 2nd Indian to be caught stealing after getting a walk from Stieb.
2nd time that Pat Borders has uncorked a good throw. A little bit high, but it was in time. He had something on it.
So the Tribe is gone here in the home 2nd in Cleveland, and the game remains
and that's
scoreless
key because erasing runners in the 1st and 2nd just basically means that Stieb gets to face the bottom of the order in the 3rd. He strikes at the side, and he gets to face the same bottom of the order in the 6th inning. And here's what happens there against the number 9 hitter Joel Skinner.
Well, the Jays have never had a no-hitter. They've had 11 one-hitters, and believe me, this ballpark owes Dave Stieb a no-hit game. One of his one-hitters, perhaps the most heartbreaking, came here at a bad hop at second base. Ball that should have been a routine out for the final out of the game, and the no-hitter hopped into right field instead. September 24th, 88. The second baseman that day, Julio Franco, just shook his head and said he couldn't believe it. He got the hit off. Strike 1 to Joel Skinner.
The other interesting thing about the Blue Jays pitching They've had 7 shutouts. 6 of those shutouts this year have been combined. Dave Stieb with the only shutout, 9 innings.
They're waving at almost everything he throws now. Weak strike there by Joel Skinner.
So far, the bottom third of the order, Snyder, Brookins, and Skinner, are 0 for 5 with 5 strikeouts. And if Steve makes the pitch he wants, it'll be.
He's never a big strikeout pitcher. He strikes out 125 this year, which should tell you something. But 9 of them come today. Different era. Different demands on an arm.
See if Skinner would chase it. Dave put it right in his mitt.
He has struck out the South for the second inning in this game. He did it also in the third. He was K total to 8 as the Indians' frustration mounts as confidence builds. 2-0
So there was only one real time when Steve came close to losing the no-hitter in this game, and it was in the 8th inning when Ken Phelps was up pinch hitting, and our hearts almost stopped in this exact moment you're about to see here.
What Dave has been able to do with that breaking pitch today is really tie up the left-handed hitters. None of them have been able to get the arms extended and get anything on the ball.
Phelps was a 10-year pro who had 4 20-homer seasons, and this is the second last game of his career. He plays on September 8th. He's playing out the spring. But look at this.
Phelps has had a couple of decent rips on those last 2 pitches. The one breaking ball out over the plate. That last one a little more on the inner half, but still a good swing by the veteran.
Yeah, that was about 3.7 feet from the being fair in right field. So that was the one our heart jumped the most. But we're also thankful. We're also thankful that, again, Hall of Famer Fred McGriff was playing first base in this game, because without Fred McGriff, I don't think they would have had any offense, which was typical for Steve in terms of the low run support. So Fred cranked a home run early on, and then just for some insurance, in the 9th inning, Fred took it deep again to give us a little breathing room, which we were never used to in a Steve game, much less a near no-hitter or perfect game. So this is what that looked like. So kudos to you, Fred. Thank you, Crime Dog.
Yeah, and watch this swing. It's one of the most beautiful left-handed home run swings I've ever seen.
That's 3-0.
Obviously, it's more comfortable to Fred because he normally has the spread out stance, but there are some hitters who, against a knuckleball pitcher, will spread out a little bit further than they normally do. Cut down a little bit on the stride.
Three and one to McGriff.
5 for 5 the night before, so he's on a roll.
Into center, very deep and well out of here. 31 on the year, 2
Pretty
for the day.
swing.
McGriff
Isn't
strikes
it?
again.
Yeah, beautiful thing. Yeah, we were heartbroken to lose him. It was an all-important trade, of course. You know, McGriff and Tony Fernandez to San Diego for Carter and Alomar. And maybe if you don't change the makeup of the team, you don't win those championships. But at the time,
heartbreaking.
Horrible loss.
Yeah.
So where are we now?
We're heading into the bottom of the 9th. Tension rising in the stadium. Steve sitting by himself. The odd time Pat Borders might sidle up to him and talk about, you know, the jets that were flying overhead just to try to distract him. Nothing about the game. But as we go into the bottom of the 9th, tense. Len and I were on the phone to each other.
I'm going to put this on.
So I'm 19 at that time, about a month away from turning 20. Len is 20 now. So we called each other on the phone for this bottom of the 9th. And we were like videotaping each household as we were going along. So yeah, Len, whenever you're ready, let's just get into it.
It's to pull off. That's what Manny Lee has done the last 2 times.
He will send Steve back to work in search for him. A lifetime elusive no-hit game. The Blue Jays have never had one. Most of the day, Staples on the bats. Blue Jays baseball. Steve has had it all going this afternoon.
Even a Toronto fan can't spell Steve properly. I don't know if that's Come on. Wow.
He's going to face some new people, though, because John McNamara had most of his starters, his regulars on the bench. He could use them to pinch hit here in the 9th inning.
Yeah, he's going to have Chris James and Candy Maldonado to face this inning. James will probably go up and hit first for Tom Brookins.
It's the 4th time he's been here the second time here in Cleveland.
But here he is now. So this is a test. Sometimes these guys are really hungry coming off the bench, and you can get them to overswing.
And through it all,
I almost went to
thoughts
this
going
game.
through Pat Borders' head.
Wow.
He's never handled a no-hitter in the major leagues. So a lot of pressure on that man right there as well.
No Blue Jay catcher ever ends. Last inning or so, when Dave has missed, it has been on the high side. In fact, getting higher and higher as he goes along. James into left field. Tracking over is Glenn Allen Hill. There is room. There's the out. One gone.
Yeah. It felt like anything that was hit in the outfield, you just like, oh God, don't land like the Roberto Kelly thing did. Please find a glove. We had about 24,000 fans that day. Capacity is 72,000. It's a football.
No-hitter, a rain-shortened game.
Yeah, this is the at bat that gets me. This is like my favorite at bat of all time coming up here.
Most of the outs been routine variety.
Here is the power of Candy Maldonado, a 76 RBI man for the Indians. He takes a wild swing at strike one.
Like, I think this is your favorite at bat of all time, or second favorite.
And you can hear the tension in the crowd as well, right? With every pitch, with every strike.
For the catcher Joel Skinner, 3-0 Cleveland.
Oh,
3-0 Toronto in Cleveland, up with the face of Maldonado.
Stop leaning over the plate.
exactly.
You're just excited too.
It really is exciting. You don't get this opportunity.
Do not.
Very often.
See Pat saying, keep it down.
Chops it foul to go 2-2.
That's good to see Pat Borders back there taking charge in that manner. He's into this too. And he's motioning to Dave, who you pointed out has had a few pitches up. And he said, keep that ball down.
There is pressure on everybody.
This is my favorite pitch of all time.
He's an out away. Maldonado on the 113th pitch thrown by Steve becomes the second.
113.
Way up in his face, he swings through it.
Not exactly where Dave
Man,
wanted it
nervous.
because Pat had set up outside, but he ran the fastball up and in and got Maldonado to chase it.
So for the 4th time, he takes it to this stage. 2 out in the 9th inning for the 2nd time here in Cleveland.
Everyone knows he's been here so many times before.
Him from center field will face him. He is twice grounded out, and he is walked today. And Steve starts him with ball
This was
one.
Cleveland's flavor of the moment. Alex Cole had been a midsummer call-up, and as you can see, he's at 328, and he looked for all the world like he was going to be one of those 75 steal kind of characters. So he's their leadoff hitter, and we were, for whatever reason, we just sort of thought this is the guy to be scared of.
Ball 2.
Yeah, I remember the Maldonado at bat, the way the crowd just explodes when he gets that survey.
Jerry Brown is scheduled next.
Sure.
He walks it. His 4th pass of the day.
Now he's going to get into it. I'd love to know what he said here.
He's
telling him to watch his arm slot.
Fortunately, the Blue Jays have.
So yeah, we're just waiting with the tension with a walk even. We're just waiting to see what this guy is going to do. But back again, 2 outs in the 9th. Back to where we've been before.
The only thing that they mention is the fact that it's now a 3-0 game. McGriff can now play off first and maybe be in a better position to field something hit up the between first and second, or a repeat of the Jim Traber hit. I don't know.
26 behind him. He needs 1 more out.
Finally, 6 straight balls.
Strike 1, 1-1. Easily over the second base goes Cole. Nobody paying attention to him, but his run alone doesn't matter in this game.
Now 4:02
Jays lead 3-0.
November 2nd, 1990.
In right field, he has got a no-hitter for Dave Stieb.
Finally.
The frustration is finally over. The first in Toronto Blue Jay history. Report here in Cleveland this afternoon.
Yeah. There are a lot of Jay luminaries in that crowd. David Wells is there, Rance Mulliniks, Tom Hankey. George Bell didn't play. He had some eye issues.
Tony Fernandez.
Yep. John Candelari's in that group. He was a September trade acquisition. Trade deadline in August. He had a no-hitter in 1976 for Pittsburgh.
There certainly isn't a more deserving pitcher in the major leagues because he's been so close so many times to finally get the no-hitter.
Here's Fergie with Dave Stieb.
Well, I'll tell you, it is about time, partner.
I still don't believe it, Fergie. I'm numb right now. I just can't believe that ball went to him.
Dave, you've had a sensational career with Toronto. This is a moment you'll never, ever forget.
That's right, Fergie, I won't.
And you've had 5 cracks at it. You got it.
That many? Oh, geez.
All right.
That's it.
He's like, don't mention how many.
Oh,
Yeah,
my God, man.
We went away from that. We went to dinner with the family, and we were just on cloud 9 at that time. And then, yeah, what else can you really say at that point? But we're nothing to date, nothing so far since that date in terms of no hitters. There's been some near misses, but watching him, everything culminates into that moment in his career with all those opportunities that we witnessed before and a lot of near misses. It was great to finally put that to bed and rest in peace, near misses.
The lone Toronto Blue Jays no-hitter, September 2nd of 1990, 35 years ago today. Honestly, Blake and Len, this has been so much fun. Thank you, gentlemen, for
It's nice to
sharing
watch with
your
other people,
knowledge
yeah.
with all of us Blue Jays fans. Dave Stieb today, definitely check these guys out. And you know what? While you're checking things out, Baseball Town is in 2 days. All right, we've got Jonah Birnbaum from The Score, Chris Black from Sportsnet, Rob Wong from the Toronto Sun. Get your tickets. Save $5 by using the code baseball. You can get your link. The tickets are in our link in the comment section and description. Again, Blake and Len, thank you so very much. This was a lot of fun, gentlemen.
Thank you,
Thank
Scott.
you for having us, sir. Appreciate
Absolutely.
it. Thank you for having us.